Well, I think we've already had a little resurrection in the service, wouldn't you say? So turn to somebody and say, I'm ready for some more resurrection. I want you to imagine the Easter story as breaking news. Now imagine how differently that story would be told if it were told by, say, Anderson Cooper on CNN, or Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, or Tucker Carlson on Fox News, or if you turned in the radio and it was Steve Inskeep on NPR, or how differently it would be told by Rush Limbaugh on the Rush Limbaugh Show, or my personal favorite, Peter Sagal on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. The point is not who you listen to. The point is, we know that they would each frame the story differently. What they emphasized, who they interviewed, would result in a different meaning. Are you with me so far? So we are meaning makers. We're all here today because at some deep level we seek meaning in our lives. And that's why I think we love stories so much, because stories help us make sense of our lives. And we can't underestimate the power of stories to shape our reality, individually and collectively. There are certain stories that are being told right now that shape what we're thinking. The same is true of our own lives. Most of the time, we're so deeply in our own stories, so deeply embedded in them, we don't realize the extent to which that shapes us. I want you to think of your own life for a minute. We all have historical facts and events which we cannot change. But how we tell the story about those facts and events have meaning, one way or another. There's a professor at the University of Texas in Austin, an English professor, who's come up with this rubric, and Betty Sue Flowers is her name. She says there's basically 3 ways to tell a story. And you have 3 different outcomes, 3 different energies. The first way, she says, is that you can tell the story as a victim. Those kind of stories revolve around how you have been wronged. And underneath that is the need to feel vindicated, defended, or avenged. Focuses on the wounds we have. I certainly have told stories where I was the victim because I needed to be vindicated. What if the Easter story was told that way? Through that way. Mary Magdalene, she'd tell it like this: well, while it was dark and I was all alone, the men weren't there. The tomb was empty, there was nothing. They took away Jesus. Oh yeah, right. Peter and John came, but then they left right away, left me alone. Because people always abandon me, even in my grief. I was crying, I was sobbing. I was sobbing, I was crying. And someone called me. I thought it was the gardener. I don't know, maybe it was Jesus, but then he left me too. Now, all these things happened, didn't they? But when we tell the story as a victim, the ways that we have been wrong, it doesn't lead us to transformation. In fact, what it does is it identifies, or we become identified with our wounds, the things that have happened to us. Well, she says there's a second way to tell the story, and that's to frame the story, and that's when you tell the story as if you're the hero. My personal favorite. Because you know, justification, validation, propping up the ego. Like, wow, I saved the day. Kind of like Jorge was being at the children's moment today. So how would Mary Magdalene tell the story if she was telling it from the hero perspective? Wow. I went to see the tomb when it was still dark. I knew there could be soldiers there, but I wasn't afraid. The men were. I was willing to face death, but the tomb was empty. I ran and told Peter and John, and they, for the first time, believed me. But they went back home. I was the one who stayed. And then Jesus appeared to me. He said his God was my God. And I was chosen to make the announcement, he is risen. I'll probably be famous for this one day. Maybe even get a book deal. All those things happened. But when we tell the story as a hero, it kind of makes us feel like I'm a little better. And most of the time, it doesn't lead us to transformation. But she says there's a third way to tell the story. You can tell it as if you're a victim. You can retell it as if you're a hero. But the third way to frame your story is to tell your story as if your life had a purpose. And that purpose is to learn how to love, to grow, to understand, to be a learner, to be transformed. So Mary Magdalene maybe would tell it like this. I came to the tomb early expecting one thing, but I discovered something else entirely. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew I didn't have to experience this alone, so I went and got Peter and John, my comrades. They were dumbfounded too. And after they left, I couldn't stop crying. I was just in such grief because the one I loved had died. And someone asked me why I was crying. I thought it was the gardener. But then he said my name. I was transfixed, transformed, because in that moment I recognized, I knew who it was. Love had not died. But he was different, and I couldn't cling to what had been. I had to embrace the mystery of it all. But let me tell you this, something happened in the garden, and something happened in me, and I am forever changed. I am changed by love. We change by the way we tell our story. And you know, when something or someone changes, we often think that it is no longer itself, but the truth is, and hear me now, a thing or a person transformed is more fully itself than ever. Okay, I'm preaching up here for 10 minutes and I haven't got an amen yet, so help me out here, folks, help me out. I want to say that whoever you are and whatever has gone on in your life, you might be at the pinnacle of your life. Everything might be going well, or you might be in some dark night that you haven't even told anybody about yet. But you can be transformed. And it can happen again and again. The problem with some theology about resurrection is they think it only happened once. It happens again and again and again. Ask Malia Zimmerman. She retold her story. And did you see and feel love radiating off her today? One of the most powerful, mysterious processes in nature is the metamorphosis of the caterpillar into a butterfly. And over the last 6 weeks, small cocoons have been hanging on these bare branches. And today, they have changed, gone through the process of chrysalis. The caterpillar doesn't die, but its cells are rearranged. And one of the most beautiful things in the world is a butterfly. And the purpose of the caterpillar is to become a butterfly. And the process is really messy. Inside that cocoon, inside the chrysalis, is goo, or transformation soup, if you want to call it. But it's that goo that makes the wings that are so beautiful, and it is the same in our life. The things that are messy in our lives. I won't make you raise your hand, but anybody had gotten a mess in their life before? Because life is messy. But those very things, addictions, loss, anxiety, shame, lack of self-respect, those stories that we tell ourselves, all that becomes the goo of transformation. The cocoon didn't look like much, and that's exactly what we feel at times, isn't it? But look at it now. If butterflies could tell their story, how would they tell it? We are changed by how we tell our stories. So, friends, what stories are you telling about yourself? What story are you telling that might be keeping you from resurrection? You know, I'm ending soon, but I'm just getting a little wound up, if that's okay. Just recently, I've taken up boxing. So, not on another person, but on a bag. It's a great workout. But every time I have a new trainer, just as we start with the bag, they come over and say, Have you fought before? My response in my head, my whole life. But here's what I realized. It's easy for me to tell the story of being a fighter. Whether it was when I was young and wasn't supposed to walk, when I experienced incredible discrimination, fighting on behalf of justice and the marginalized. I am ready to go with that jab, cross, uppercut. See, I'm learning. But here's what's true. The way of telling that story does not lead me to transformation. It doesn't lead me to love. I want to let go of that. I want my life to have such a purpose that it is that I'm learning to love. So along with me, let love be the great interpreter. Let love be your frame. You don't need to be a victim. You can be a hero now and then. But tell your story with purpose, and that purpose is to learn to love. So whoever you are today, tell a different story about your parents. Start there. How about this? Tell a different story about your body. Ooh. I've gone from preaching to meddling, as the Baptists say. Tell a new story about your faith. You don't need to be a victim who was saved because you're a worm. You don't need to be a hero where you're saved and no one else is. All you need is to say, I'm following the best I can so I can learn to love. And together, oh, please, can we tell a different story about our country? It wasn't just Jesus that was resurrected that early morning in the garden. It was Mary Magdalene too, and she was transformed and changed by love. And through the eyes of love, she thought it was the gardener. And guess what? It was. Because when you are transformed by love, you see the universal Christ in every person. The gardener is the Christ when you see through the eyes of love. So, breaking news, Jesus is resurrected. You are too. Go tell that story. Amen.